Chapter 4 Shooting Down the Mountainside. The next morning the sun came out early as bright as ever, and then Peter appeared with the goats, and again the two children climbed up together to the high meadows, and so it went on day after day, till Heidi, passing her life thus among the grass and flowers, was burnt brown with the sun and grew so strong and healthy that nothing ever ailed her. She was happy, too, and lived from day to day as free and light-hearted as the little birds that make their home among the green forest trees. Then the autumn came, and the wind blew louder and stronger, and the grandfather would say sometimes, "Today you must stay at home, Heidi. A sudden gust of the wind would blow a little thing like you over the rocks into the valley below in a moment." Whenever Peter heard that he must go alone, he looked very unhappy, for he saw nothing but mishaps of all kinds ahead, and did not know how he would bear the long, dull day without Heidi. Then, too, there was the good meal he would miss, and besides that, the goats on these days were so naughty and obstinate that he had twice the usual trouble with them, for they had grown so accustomed to Heidi's presence that they would run in every direction and refuse to go on unless she was with them. Heidi was never unhappy, for wherever she was, she found something to interest or amuse her. She liked best, it is true, to go out with Peter up to the flowers and the great bird, but she also found her grandfather's hammering and sawing and carpentering very entertaining, and if it should chance to be the day when the large round goat's milk cheese was made, she enjoyed beyond measure watching her grandfather stir the great cauldron. The thing which attracted her most, however, was the waving and roaring of the three old fir trees on these windy days. She would stand underneath them and look up, unable to tear herself away, looking and listening while they bowed and swayed and roared as the mighty wind rushed through them. There was no longer now the warm, bright sun that had shone all through the summer, so Heidi went to the cupboard and got out her shoes and stockings and dress. Then it grew very cold, and Peter would come up early in the morning blowing on his fingers to keep them warm. But he soon left off coming, for one night there was a heavy fall of snow, and the next morning the whole mountain was covered with it, and not a single little green leaf even was to be seen anywhere upon it. There was no Peter that day, and Heidi stood at the little window looking out in wonderment, for the snow was beginning again, and the thick flakes kept falling till the snow was up to the window, and still they continued to fall, and the snow grew higher, so that at last the window could not be opened, and she and her grandfather were shut up fast within the hut. Heidi thought this was great fun, and ran from one window to the other. The next day, the snow having ceased, the grandfather went out and shoveled it away from the house and threw it into such great heaps that they looked like mountains. Heidi and her grandfather were sitting one afternoon on their three-legged stools before the fire when there came a great thump at the door. It was Peter, all white with snow, for he had had to fight his way through deep snowdrifts. He had been determined, however, to climb up to the hut, for it was a week now since he had seen Heidi. "Good evening," he said, as he came in. Then he went and placed himself as near the fire as he could, his whole face beaming with pleasure at finding himself there. Heidi looked on in astonishment, for Peter was beginning to thaw all over with the warmth, so that he had the appearance of a trickling waterfall. "Well, General, how goes it with you? Now that you have lost your army, you will have to turn your pen and pencil." "Why must he turn to his pen and pencil?" asked Heidi immediately, full of curiosity. "During the winter, he must go to school," explained her grandfather, "and learn how to read and write. It's a bit hard, although useful sometimes afterwards. Am I not right, General?" "Yes, indeed," assented Peter. Heidi's interest was now thoroughly awakened, and she had so many questions to ask Peter about school, and the conversation took so long that he had time to get thoroughly dry. "Well now, General, you have been under fire for some time and must want some refreshment. Come and join us," said the grandfather, as he brought the supper out of the cupboard, and Heidi pushed the stools to the table. There was also now a bench fastened against the wall, for as he was no longer alone, the grandfather had put up seats of various kinds here and there, long enough to hold 2 persons, for Heidi had a way of always keeping close to her grandfather, whether he was walking, sitting, or standing. Peter opened his round eyes very wide when he saw what a large piece of meat Uncle gave him on his thick slice of bread. It was a long time since Peter had had anything so nice to eat. As soon as the pleasant meal was over, he began to get ready for returning home, for it was already growing dark. He had said his good night and his thanks, and was just going out when he turned and said, "I shall come again next Sunday, this day a week, and my grandmother said word that she would like you to come and see her some day." It was quite a new idea to Heidi that she should go and pay anybody a visit, and she could not get it out of her head. So the first thing she said to her grandfather the next day was, "I must go down to see the grandmother today. She will be expecting me." "The snow is too deep," answered the grandfather, trying to put her off. Not a day passed, but she said 5 or 6 times to her grandfather, "I must certainly go today. The grandmother will be waiting for me." On the 4th day, when Heidi was sitting on her high stool at dinner, with the bright sun shining in upon her through the window, she again repeated her little speech. "I must certainly go down to see the grandmother today, or else I shall keep her waiting too long." The grandfather rose from the table, climbed up to the hayloft, and brought down the thick sack that was Heidi's coverlid, and said, "Come along, then." The child skipped out gleefully after him into the glittering world of snow. The old fir trees were standing now quite silent, their branches covered with the white snow, and they looked so lovely as they glittered and sparkled in the sunlight that Heidi jumped for joy at the sight and kept on calling out, come here, grandfather, the fir trees are all silver and gold." This was not a herdsman's hut like her grandfather's, with one large room on the ground floor and a hayloft above, but a very old cottage where everything was narrow and poor and shabby. A table was close to the door, and as Heidi stepped in, she saw a woman sitting at it, putting a patch on a vest coat, which Heidi recognized at once as Peter's. In the corner sat an old woman, bent with age, spinning. Heidi was quite sure this was the grandmother, so she went up to the spinning wheel and said, "Good day, grandmother. I have come at last. Did you think I was a long time coming?" The old woman raised her head and felt for the hand that the child held out to her, and when she had found it, she passed her own over it thoughtfully for a few seconds, and then said, "Are you the child who lives up with Uncle? Are you Heidi?" Yes, I've just come down in the sleigh with grandfather." "Is it possible? Why, your hands are quite warm. Brigitte, did Uncle come himself with the child?" "Peter's mother some day. Look how it keeps on banging." "Ah, dear child, I am not able to see it, but I can hear that and many other things besides the shutter. Everything about the place rattles and creaks when the wind is blowing, and it gets inside through all the cracks and holes. The house is going to pieces, and in the night, when the other 2 are asleep, I often lie awake in fear and trembling, thinking that the whole place will give way and fall and kill us, and there is not a creature to mend anything for us, for Peter does not understand such work." "But why cannot you see that the shutter is loose? Look, there it goes again. See, that one, there." And Heidi pointed to the particular shutter. "Alas, child, I can see nothing, nothing," said the grandmother in a voice of lamentation. "But if I were to go outside and put back the shutter so that you had more light, then you could see, grandmother." "No, no, not even them. No one can make it light for me again." "But if you were to go outside among all the white snow, then surely you would find it light. Just come with me, grandmother, and I will show you." Heidi took hold of the old woman's hand to lead her along, for she was beginning to feel quite distressed at the thought of her being without light. "Let me be, dear child. It is always dark for me now, whether in snow or sun. It will never be light for me again on earth. Never." At these words, Heidi broke into loud crying. In her distress, she kept on sobbing out, "Who can make it light for you again? Can no one do it? Isn't there anyone who can do it?" The grandmother now tried to comfort the child, but it was not easy to quiet her. Heidi did not often weep, but when she did, she could not get over her trouble for a long while. At last the old woman said, "Dear Heidi, you cannot think how glad I am to hear a kind word when I can no longer see, and it is such a pleasure to me to listen to you while you talk. So come and sit beside me and tell me what you do up there and how grandfather occupies himself. I knew him very well in the old days, but for many years now I have heard nothing of him, except through Peter, who never says much." This was a new and happy idea to Heidi. She quickly dried her tears and said in a comforting voice, Wait, grandmother, till I have told grandfather everything. He will make it light for you again, I am sure, and will do something so that the house will not fall. He will put everything right for you." Heidi now began to give a lively description of her life with the grandfather, and the days she spent on the mountain with the goats, and then went on to tell what she did during the winter, and how her grandfather was able to make all sorts of things, seats and stools and mangers, where the hay was put for Little Swan and Little Bear, besides a new large water tub for her to bathe in when the summer came, and a new milk bowl and spoon. The grandmother listened with the greatest attention, only from time to time addressing her daughter. "Do you hear that, Brigitta? Do you hear what she is saying about Uncle?" The conversation was suddenly interrupted by a heavy thump on the door, and in marched Peter, who stood stock still, opening his eyes with astonishment when he caught sight of Heidi. Then his face beamed with smiles as she called out, "Good evening, Peter." "What, is the boy back from school already?" exclaimed the grandmother in surprise. "I have not known an afternoon to pass so quickly as this one for years. How is the reading getting on, Peter?" "As usual," was Peter's answer. The old woman gave a little sigh. "Ah, well," she said, "I hoped you would have something different to tell me by this time, as you were going to be 12 years old this February." "What was it you hoped he would have to tell you?" asked Heidi, interested in all the grandmother said. "I mean that he ought to have learned to read a bit now. Up there on the shelf is an old prayer book with beautiful songs in it, which I have not heard for a long time and cannot now remember to repeat to myself, and I hope that Peter would soon learn enough to be able to read one of them for me sometimes, but he finds it too difficult." Heidi now jumped up from her low chair and, holding out her hand hastily to the grandmother, said, "Good night, grandmother. It is getting dark. I must go home at once," and bidding goodbye to Peter and his mother, she went towards the door. But the grandmother called out in an anxious voice, "Wait, wait, Heidi. You must not go alone like that. Peter must go with you. Have you got something warm to put round your throat?" "I have not anything to put on, but I am sure I shall not be cold." And with that she ran outside and went off at such a pace that Peter had difficulty overtaking her. The children had taken but a few steps before they saw the grandfather coming down to meet them, and in another minute his long strides had brought him to their side. "That's right, Heidi, you have kept your word," said the grandfather, and then wrapping the sack firmly round her, he lifted her in his arms and strode off with her up the mountain. They had no sooner got inside the hut than Heidi at once began, "Grandfather, tomorrow we must take the hammer and the long nails and fasten grandmother's shutter and drive in a lot more nails in other places, for her house shakes and rattles all over." "We must we? Who told you that?" asked her grandfather. "Nobody told me, but I know it for all that," replied Heidi, "for everything is giving way, and when the grandmother cannot sleep, she lies trembling, for she thinks that every minute the house will fall down on their heads. And everything now is dark for grandmother, and she does not think anyone can make it light for her again. But you will be able to, I am sure, grandfather. Tomorrow we must go and help her. We will, won't we, grandfather?" The child was clinging to the old man and looking up at him in trustful confidence. The grandfather looked down at Heidi for a while without speaking, and then said, "Yes, Heidi, we will do something to stop the rattling. At least we can do that. We will go down about it tomorrow." The child was skipping round the room for joy, crying out, "We shall go tomorrow! We shall go tomorrow!" The grandfather kept his promise. On the following afternoon, he brought the sleigh out again, and as on the previous day, he set Heidi down at the door of the grandmother's hut and said, "Go in now, and when it grows dark, come out again." Then he put the sack in the sleigh and went round the house. Heidi had hardly opened the door and sprung into the room when the grandmother called out from her corner, "It's the child again! Here she comes!" Heidi ran to her and then quickly drew the little stool close up to the old woman and, seating herself upon it, began to tell and ask her all kinds of things. All at once came the sound of heavy blows against the wall of the hut, and Grandmother gave such a start of alarm that she nearly upset the spinning wheel, and cried in a trembling voice, "Oh, my God, now it is coming! The house is going to fall upon us!" But Heidi caught her by the arm and said soothingly, "No, no, Grandmother, do not be frightened. It is only Grandfather with his hammer. He is mending up everything so that you shan't have such fear and trouble." "Is it possible? Is it really possible? So the dear God has not forgotten us?" exclaimed the grandmother. "Do you hear, Brigitte, what that noise is? Did you hear what the child says? Go outside, Brigitte, and if it is Almunkel, tell him he must come inside a moment that I may thank him." Brigitte went outside and found Almunkel in the act of fastening some heavy pieces of new wood along the wall. She stepped up to him and said, "Good evening, Uncle. Mother and I thank you for doing us such a kind service, and she would like to tell you herself how grateful she is. I do not know who else would have done it for us. We shall not forget your kindness, for I am sure—" "That will do," said the old man, interrupting her. "I know what you think of Almunkel without you telling me. Go indoors again. I can find out for myself where the mending is wanted." Brigitte obeyed on the spot, for Almunkel had a way with him that made few people care to oppose his will. He went on knocking with his hammer all around the house, and then mounted the narrow steps to the roof and hammered away there until he had used up all the nails he had brought with him. Meanwhile, it had been growing dark, and he had hardly come down from the roof and dragged the sleigh out from behind the goat shed when Heidi appeared outside. The grandfather wrapped her up and took her in his arms as he had done the day before, for although he had to drag the sleigh up the mountain after him, he feared that if the child sat in it alone, her wrappings would fall off in that she would be nearly if not quite frozen, so he carried her warm and safe in his arms. So the winter went by. After many years of joyless life, the blind grandmother had at last found something to make her happy. She listened for the little tripping footsteps as soon as day had come, and when she heard the door open and knew the child was really there, she would call out, "God be thanked, she has come again." And Heidi had also grown very fond of the old grandmother, and when she at last knew for certain that no one could make it light for her again, she was overcome with sorrow. But the grandmother told her again that she felt the darkness much less when Heidi was with her. And so every fine winter day the child came traveling down in her sleigh. The grandfather always took her, never raising any objection. Indeed, he always carried the hammer and sundry other things down in the sleigh with him, and many an afternoon was spent by him in making the goatherd's cottage sound and tight. It no longer groaned and rattled the whole night through, and the grandmother, who for many winters had not been able to sleep in peace, as she did now, said she shall never forget what the uncle had done for her.